For this round, we'll look at a pair of writers, one from the 3rd century, the other from the 4th century. We'll see that what some call the Christ killer myth is starting to gain clarity, even as the arguments for it fail to get any more robust. Cyprian wrote a book titled Testimonies Against the Jews, which might seem odd to the modern reader. It collects biblical texts, mostly from the Old Testament, as testimonies against the Judeans, supposedly demonstrating that they should have known better than to oppose Christianity. If you only read the main text, you may wonder how there can be any anti-Semitism in a recitation of Old Testament texts. Well, to find that, you have to look at the section titles. Cyprian prefaces his quotations with titles like, "That the Jews would fasten Christ to the cross." Of course, with only the titles offering declarative content, we're dreadfully short on specifics and lack anything to suggest that Cyprian thereby assigns blame to Jews in perpetuity. However, what we do see possibly reveals the necessity of revisionism to maintain such a stance. The Gospels certainly don't say that Jews fastened Jesus to the cross. That job literally belonged to the Romans. The critic may say that perhaps Cyprian is speaking figuratively, and only saying that the Judeans' actions fastened Jesus to the cross, much as John says that Pilate scourged Jesus. If this is so, then titles like these might be regarded as literally true, provided that Jews is restricted to the scant group of leaders that appeared in the Gospels. Cyprian does not define within his text what scope or range Jews is supposed to have. That, of course, makes him a questionable witness to interpretations of the New Testament that promoted wholesale anti-Semitism, and later justified it on the same grounds. We should also note that Cyprian apparently made no use of Matthew 27:25. Our second subject this time is Ambrose of Milan, who wrote what is called Letters About a Synagogue Burning. It represents a sea change in more ways than one. By his time, Christianity was no longer getting the short end of the persecution stick. Theodosius I, a professing Christian, was the emperor. The reference to Judean involvement in the death of Jesus is not even a single line here. It's hardly an afterthought in comparison to a litany of alleged disasters reported or predicted by Ambrose, ranging from Judeans burning churches to a concern that by rebuilding the synagogue, it will somehow allow Judeans to have some trophy over Christ's people. The claim is outlandish in the extreme by any standard, especially given the relative position of Christians and Judeans in the Roman Empire at this time. One thing it does tell us is that in some way Ambrose supposes that Judeans of his day shared in the blame for Christ's death. What it doesn't tell us is how he came to this conclusion, or on what basis it was reached by him. Given his apparent paranoia and the limited space he devotes to the claim compared to other alleged impending disasters, we might do well to conclude that he had no basis for his charges. After this, we enter the 4th century, and there's no question that we see writers who engage in full-fledged Christ-killer mythology. It's also past this point that we begin to see Matthew 27:25 used in some earnest. So we'll now be able to close our historical survey, following one more look at a last subject who appears much further down the line.